Thailand, a land where Buddhism isn't just a religion, it's a pulse running through the veins of an entire nation. A place where rituals, tradition, and spiritual symbolism shape daily life. Among these rituals, there is one called Kanisat, a symbolic act where people release captured animals, fish, birds, turtles, back into nature. For Buddhists, it's a gesture of compassion, a way to gain merit, a way to cleanse the soul. On April 14th, 2023, two women are preparing to perform this peaceful ritual together. One of them is Sararat Rangsiwuthaporn, 36 years old, pregnant, soft-spoken, and seemingly harmless. Everyone calls her Am. The other is her new friend, Siraporn Kwankyo, a 32-year-old mother affectionately known as Koi. They aren't lifelong friends. They met recently, but they bonded quickly. Close enough for Koi to agree, without hesitation, to travel with Am to the western province of Ratchaburi for the ceremony. After lunch, the two walk toward the riverbank of the Mekong River, where they plan to release the fish they bought together. Koi walks down the steps toward the water. Am crosses the road to use the restroom. Just a few minutes. Nothing suspicious. But when Am comes back, everything has changed. She reaches the river steps and freezes. Koi is lying on the ground, motionless. Bystanders rush over. Emergency services are called, but despite every effort, Koi dies within minutes, right there by the river. A young, healthy mother, gone without warning. Her family is shattered. Her 10-year-old daughter, Wirafat, is left without a mother. And her own mother refuses to believe it was just a cardiac arrest. As authorities initially claim, something feels wrong. Too sudden, too senseless. So the family requests an autopsy and an investigation. And that's when things start unraveling, because the riverbank had something the killer didn't expect. A security camera, a silent witness, and what it recorded sends chills through everyone who watches it. When Am returns from the restroom, she walks toward Koi, glances at her unconscious body, then turns around, walks away, casually signals a passerby with a quick wave, and leaves. She doesn't kneel, she doesn't panic, she doesn't call for help, she doesn't even look back. Instead, she climbs into a car and drives off. A friend would stay. A friend would scream for help. A friend would break down. But Am shows nothing, not even concern. And there's something else. When she climbs the steps, she's holding objects she didn't have earlier. The video resolution is too low to show what they are, but investigators later learn that Koi's luxury handbag is missing, along with her jewelry. And the woman who left the scene so calmly was the last to see her alive. The police now have questions, many questions, and when they begin digging into Am's past, they stumble upon something unimaginable. Koi wasn't the only one. Between 2015 and 2023, 14 people connected to Am died suddenly, all in similar ways, all before their time, and all after spending time with her. The collapse by the river was not a tragedy. It was the latest chapter in the story of Thailand's deadliest serial killer. A few hours after Koi's death, Investigators start digging into Am's background. What they uncover doesn't just raise suspicion, it freezes the blood. Because this wasn't the first person to collapse suddenly after being with her. Far from it. Over the past 8 years, 14 people connected to Am died in almost identical circumstances, different towns, different lives, different years, but always the same pattern. Each one spent time with her shortly before their body gave up. Their death certificates mention heart failure, respiratory collapse, sudden circulatory shutdown. Causes that can seem natural unless they repeat again and again around the exact same person. The first recorded case goes back to 2015 when a woman named Montathip Sa, to her friends, died just hours after Am picked her up from the airport. Say had lent Am significant amounts of money, tens of thousands of baht, none of which was ever returned. After her death, gold jewelry disappeared from her home. Years later in 2020, another close acquaintance, Nit, collapsed and died shortly after sharing a meal with Am. Nit had co-signed loans for her and even pawned a car so Am could access more money. She was only 36 years old. Then the deaths accelerated. 1 person in 2021, 6 more in 2022, sometimes only days apart. 3 friends died within the same week of August 2022. 2 women on consecutive days, another 5 days later. And Am always seemed to be there shortly before they died. In March 2023, even her boyfriend collapsed and died. D, a 35-year-old moneylender, regularly gave her cash. The day before his death, she had handed him a medicine for hemorrhoids. He began vomiting soon after taking it, collapsed, and never recovered. Hours after his death, gold jewelry and valuables vanished from his apartment, and one of his necklaces was later found around Am's neck. Among the 15 people who suddenly fell ill around her, only 1 woman survived. She collapsed during a lunch with Am and was rushed to the hospital just in time. She later confirmed Am had given her a syrup for a cough moments before she felt her chest crushing and her vision fading. The autopsy on Khoi finally exposed the truth behind all these tragedies. Doctors found potassium cyanide in her system, a poison so fast and devastating that even a tiny dose can shut down the heart and brain in minutes. It mimics natural cardiac arrest so well that unless doctors specifically search for cyanide, it goes unnoticed. And within hours, it becomes nearly undetectable. Now everything suddenly made sense. The sudden deaths, the lack of suspicion, the repeated pattern. When investigators looked into Am's finances, the motive snapped into place. Overwhelming debt. Her online gambling addiction consumed millions of baht. Her bank records showed more than 95 million baht circulating between gambling networks and her accounts in just 3 years. Over 2.5 million euros. She borrowed constantly. She spent constantly. And every time someone asked for their money back, the same thing happened. A meal, a drink, a pill. Then, a heart attack. She targeted people who trusted her, people who lent money easily, people with savings, gold, assets, people who were unlikely to undergo autopsy unless their families insisted. Coy was meant to be her next victim, but this time, everything was caught on camera, and Am had finally made her first mistake. When police finally questioned Am about Coy's last moments, she didn't just deny wrongdoing, she denied even being with her that day. A lie that collapsed instantly once investigators reviewed the surveillance footage. There she was, walking with her, eating with her, standing only a few meters away when Coy collapsed beside the river, and then leaving her behind. Instead of calling for help, instead of kneeling beside her friend, instead of doing anything a normal human being would do, she turned around, signaled vaguely at a stranger, and walked away. Calmly, almost mechanically. Moments later, she drove off with Coy's car. Inside that car were her handbag, her jewelry, her phone, everything she had on her. All of it vanished. The surveillance video didn't just expose her lie, it exposed her nature. As investigators dug deeper, they found the cyanide trail wasn't a coincidence. Containers of poisoned capsules were recovered in her home. Cyanide residue was found in the driver's seat of one of her cars, a car she regularly shared with her ex-husband, a high-ranking police officer. Even more disturbing, Am had access to medical contacts. Her half-sister was a former nurse, and police discovered an antidote for cyanide poisoning stored in her home. There was no official reason for a private home to hold such a drug. Bit by bit, the investigators pieced together an image they could hardly believe. A smiling, pregnant woman with a soft-spoken voice, moving through life while quietly eliminating anyone who became financially inconvenient. Her victims weren't random. They were chosen, people with savings, people isolated, people who trusted her. Every story followed the same pattern. She borrowed money. She promised repayment. She delayed. They pressed her. She poisoned them. Some she killed for debts as small as 10,000 baht. Others died because they held valuables she could resell. One man lost his life simply because he was dating her, and therefore had money flowing into her hands. After her arrest, police discovered how deep her manipulation went. She had even instructed her brother's wife to mail Coy's empty wallet and phone to a friend. And her lawyer, a woman sworn to uphold justice, helped her hide evidence. The more investigators found, the more obvious it became. Am wasn't just a killer. She was a system, a method, a routine, refined over years, hidden behind trust and politeness. Her arrest came so quickly after Coy's death that she didn't have time to erase all the traces. If she had escaped that day, the pattern almost certainly would have continued. When confronted with the mounting evidence, Am showed no remorse, no breakdown, no denial beyond the initial lies, just a strange calm. A silence that chilled even the officers standing in front of her. In court, she appeared heavily made up, almost as if she were attending a social event rather than being judged for a string of murders. And when the verdict was announced, death penalty, she smiled. Not a nervous smile, a real one. As if none of this concerned her, as if none of those people mattered. Even with the conviction secured, investigators are still unsure how many victims there truly were. The known 14 may not be the full list. She traveled constantly, changed cities often, and targeted people intentionally isolated from their families. It is entirely possible the real number is higher, much higher. But Koi's case ended the chain. A single moment of carelessness, a camera she couldn't see, brought her entire system down. She is now the most prolific serial killer ever identified in Thailand, a quiet predator who weaponized trust, friendship, and compassion to feed her addiction to money and gambling. Her story is a reminder of something terrifying. Sometimes the most dangerous monster is the one who smiles at you, calls you friend, and sits across from you at lunch. Investigators soon realized that uncovering Am's trail wasn't simply solving a crime. It was peeling back layers of a life that had been nothing but manipulation and performance. Her friends described her as gentle, polite, a devoted mother. Her neighbors said she smiled often. Her colleagues remembered her as soft-spoken, almost timid. But when police followed the money, a completely different woman emerged. Over 95 million baht had moved through her accounts in just a few years, nearly 3 million euros. Most of it funneled into illegal online gambling platforms, most of it disappearing within hours. Her addiction was bottomless. And every time she ran out of money, someone close to her died. One victim had mortgaged her car to help Am. Another had co-signed loans for her. Some had simply lent cash they would never see again. When they asked for repayment, they didn't receive excuses, they received poison. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Many victims experienced the same symptoms: sudden nausea, dizziness, rapid breathing, then collapse. Family members remembered them vomiting violently minutes after sharing a drink or snack with her. Some victims died at home, others died in public places, but Am was always present just before the collapse and always gone when the victim took their last breath. One survivor, the only one, described a medicine she had been given by Am moments before her body failed her. She survived because paramedics arrived in time. Everyone else didn't. But even more disturbing than the deaths was Am's behavior afterward. She didn't grieve. She didn't attend funerals. She didn't send condolences. Instead, she withdrew cash, sold jewelry, pawned gold, emptied bank accounts, and used her victims' vehicles as if they were her own. She moved through tragedy like it was background noise. Even her partner, the man she claimed was the father of her unborn child, died shortly after taking a pill she handed him. And the very next evening, she celebrated her birthday. No mourning, no emotion, just a party. Her detachment shocked investigators more than anything. It was as if the lives she took were just transactions. As the case grew, authorities wondered how she managed to escape suspicion for so long. Part of the answer was chillingly simple. Cyanide leaves almost no trace. And in Thailand, most hospitals lack the tools to detect it unless they are specifically looking for it. Doctors attributed the deaths to heart failure, respiratory collapse, stroke, shock, all possible symptoms of cyanide poisoning. And since the victims were adults, not elderly but not particularly old either, the deaths were ruled natural. No autopsies, no toxicology tests, no alarms. Am had exploited a perfect blind spot, and she did it again and again and again. Even after her arrest, she showed no remorse. During the hearings, she sat calmly adjusting her makeup, listening politely, smiling faintly. To some, she looked bored. To others, amused, but never guilty, never afraid. She was sentenced to death, a punishment rarely carried out in Thailand, yet it didn't seem to shake her. Her crimes were not impulsive. They were systematic, cold, calculated. A woman who blended into society so seamlessly that she left 14 families grieving, confused, and convinced their loved ones had died from fate. Not murder. It wasn't fate. It was her. And if Khoi hadn't collapsed under a security camera, if her family hadn't pushed for an autopsy, if investigators hadn't noticed the pattern, the killings would have continued. Because for Am, people weren't friends, or partners, or loved ones. They were fuel, resources, wallets, opportunities, and she consumed them one by one with a smile on her face. The officers quickly realized that something is deeply wrong. Too many people connected to her have died in almost identical circumstances, and each time, the last person to see them alive is her. The autopsy confirms it. Khoi's body contains lethal amounts of potassium cyanide, a poison so fast, so vicious, that victims collapse before they can even understand what's happening. A poison invisible to the naked eye, easy to disguise, nearly impossible to detect when doctors don't specifically look for it. And a poison that kills in minutes unless the antidote is administered almost immediately. It is now impossible to ignore the pattern. All 15 individuals who collapsed suddenly, those who died and the one who survived, had one thing in common. They had eaten or drunk something she gave them. A drink, a snack, a capsule, always perfectly timed, always offered with a smile. Now investigators understand why so many deaths appeared natural. Cyanide symptoms mimic a sudden cardiac event or respiratory collapse. And unless someone orders toxicology tests specifically targeting cyanide, the truth remains buried forever. But this time, because the family insisted on an autopsy, she slipped. Investigators dig deeper into her finances. The truth they uncover is astonishing. She has lost extraordinary sums of money in online gambling. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. She spends without restraint, burns through millions of baht, and borrows constantly. Her accounts are empty, yet her transactions total nearly 95 million baht over just a few years, more than 2.5 million euros. And every victim, without exception, was either wealthy, financially stable, owed money by her, or had lent her large amounts she had no intention of repaying. The pattern is clear. She befriends people who trust easily, people with savings, people with assets. She asks for loans. She promises to repay. She delays. She manipulates. And when the money stops coming, or when the lender begins asking questions, the person suddenly dies. and she walks away with their valuables, their jewelry, their cash, their gold, and their silence. Her relationships follow the same script. With D, the boyfriend who died in his early 30s, she behaved exactly the same way. The man was generous, always giving, always helping. And the moment he became less profitable for her, he ended up convulsing on the floor of a gas station. After taking a medicine she gave him. After his death, most of his gold, money, and religious amulets vanished, later found sold by her. Even the friend who survived, the only one, remembers the moment she accepted a small capsule from her. Minutes later, she felt her chest tighten, her vision blur, her body collapse. She survived only because an ambulance happened to be close by. All of it becomes undeniable. Her kindness is nothing but bait. Her gifts are weapons. And her friendship is a death sentence. Police search her home and the vehicles connected to her. What they find is chilling. Cyanide residue in a car she regularly uses. Capsules filled with cyanide hidden inside the house she shares with her ex-husband. Proof of stolen valuables. Evidence linking her directly to multiple crime scenes. And then investigators begin wondering, was she working alone? Her ex-husband, a high-ranking police officer, appears at the center of suspicious financial exchanges. Her lawyer is accused of hiding evidence. Even her half-sister, a former nurse, raises questions when officers discover an antidote for cyanide poisoning inside her home, something extremely uncommon. But no matter who helped her, the mastermind is clear. And she shows no fear, no shame, not even the slightest sign of guilt. When she is arrested, she walks calmly, almost gracefully. At her hearings, she smiles. She arrives fully made up like she's attending a celebration, not facing one of the largest murder investigations in Thai history. Her trial for Khoi's death ends with the harshest possible sentence: death. Even then, she does not cry. She does not tremble. She simply observes the courtroom as if none of this concerns her. And this is only the beginning. She still faces 13 more murder trials, 13 more families waiting for answers, 13 more victims who never had a chance to speak. And investigators still don't know the real number, because the deeper they dig, the more they realize that the trail of bodies behind her might be far longer than anyone imagined. The woman nicknamed Cyanide is now officially the most prolific serial killer in the history of Thailand. And had she not been caught after Khoi's death, she would have kept going. Investigators now face a terrifying question. How many people did she actually kill? They know of 14 confirmed victims. They know one survived. But her pattern accelerated dramatically in 2022, sometimes only days between two deaths. Victims spread across different provinces, different social circles, different ages, all collapsing suddenly, all declared natural causes, all connected to her. And that's only the people authorities have identified so far. There could be more. Victims who were never autopsied. Victims whose families never questioned the cause of death. Victims whose names have not yet surfaced. All they have is a trail of faint clues, financial transfers, odd withdrawals, stolen jewelry, phone records, and people who felt sick after meeting her, but survived long enough for the symptoms to fade, never knowing how close they came to dying. Every new discovery makes the investigators' stomachs tighten. They begin re-examining unexplained deaths going back nearly a decade, cross-checking her travel history, reviewing CCTV footage from temples, gas stations, malls, restaurants, re-interviewing old acquaintances, old lovers, old co-workers. One chilling detail comes back repeatedly. She was always calm, always composed, always ready with a soft voice, a smile, a gift. A gift she had often prepared herself. By the time they gather everything, the picture is horrifying. She did not kill in anger. She did not kill in panic. She killed with method, patience, and calculation. She killed when she needed money, and stopped only when the death served her purpose. No screaming, no violence, just a silent poison, a collapsing body, and a woman walking away with someone else's valuables. When her death sentence is announced, the courtroom watches her closely, waiting for a reaction. But she simply smiles, a small, polite smile, as if the verdict concerned someone else entirely. And in that moment, everyone understands. Remorse was never going to come, because this was never personal for her. Not revenge, not love, not hate. It was business. Cold, efficient, deadly. She remains composed even as guards escort her away. The most prolific serial killer Thailand has ever known. But the most unsettling truth is the one that haunts investigators long after the courtroom lights fade. They still don't know the real number. They may never know, because the only person who knows exactly how many lives she took is the woman who poisoned her friends while smiling at them across the table.
Subscribe and walk deeper in the dark.